NATO leaders are meeting for a summit in The Hague this Wednesday, and they're expected to rubber stamp a pledge to boost defense spending to 5% of GDP. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has praised US President Donald Trump for his win in getting Europe to pay in a big way. Spain, however, has said it wouldn't be able to reach the target by the new 2035 deadline, calling it unreasonable. The spending hike is designed to keep Trump engaged with the alliance after his return to power sparked fears that he could upend the 7-decade-old organization. On his way to the summit, the US president refused to commit to Article 5 of the alliance, the Mutual Defense Clause. Other items on the agenda are expected to include Ukraine's security after more than 3 years of war with Russia and the ongoing war in Gaza. Well, we can get more analysis on this now with Theresa Fallon, who's in The Hague. She's the director of the Center for Russia, Europe, Asia Studies. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24. Let's start by whether this NATO summit effectively is a victory lap for Donald Trump, especially after the president leaked a very flattering text message from NATO chief Mark Rutte. Or was this, as well as the fact of keeping the summit short and sweet, just an effort to avoid a blow-up from an unpredictable leader?
This, of course, has been very carefully stage managed. Mark Rutte wanted it to go well. The Hague is his hometown. They scaled it down to only 2.5 hours, a very, very short meeting. Nevertheless, we see some moves by other European member states, which you noted. Spain said that they couldn't meet that. And also other countries, for example, are considering neutrality because they don't want to pay this type of bill. So Mark Rutte very skillfully came up with the 5%, which is what Trump wanted, but it's 3.5% for defense spending and 1.5% for infrastructure like roads, bridges. So this is one way for some countries to finesse it and maybe come up with some creative accounting.
Well, is that 5% goal realistic then, especially after what Spain said, it being unreasonable, and we're hearing also from other countries who've perhaps tried to get exemptions on this?
Well, this is a 10-year plan. So we saw this happen in the past to get to 2%. Some countries were quite active in doing that, while others were laggards. And it just depends pretty much where your geography is. So one way to look at it is 1/3, which are on the front lines of the war and have deep concerns about Russia. For example, Poland has already reached that, or is close to reaching 5%. Whereas other countries like Spain, which are far away, there's about 1/3, another 1/3 of countries, which are kind of can't do it for domestic reasons. They have elections coming up. They don't want to spend on defense. They'd rather spend on education, for example. So that's another pool. And then you have the 1/3 that was going to try to make it and maybe right in the middle. So I think that this pie chart of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is pretty much a better way to understand how the spending will be. Nevertheless, the US has been saying for quite many decades, different ways. Obama said it compared to Trump, but the US has made it quite clear that allies should contribute more. The US sees a growing threat of a peer competitor in China, and they really want to focus their attention on that, and the Europeans need to step up.
And on his way to the summit, Donald Trump seemed to cast doubt on Article 5, refusing to commit to it. That's the clause that says an attack on one member is an attack on all. What's your take on that? I mean, we've since heard from other leaders saying we have no doubt about the US's commitment to this article, but is Trump's USA still a reliable member of NATO?
Well, at the NATO forum, which is running in parallel to the summit, there was a 15-minute interview with Whitaker, the U.S. ambassador to NATO. And I understood it was very carefully scripted to demonstrate that the U.S. does support NATO, does defend Article 5. But I think President Trump, that's his kind of approach, because the idea of being a little bit ambiguous should hopefully spur Europeans to spending more on defense. I think that might be his approach. I don't claim to know the real estate in his brain, but I think that the US has made quite clear that they do, not mess around with the Article 5. Nevertheless, I think President Trump does that. The Putin shock didn't wake Europe up to spend on defense, and I think the Trump shock is really doing it. And we see Mark Rutte, as you noted, with his kind of obsequious tweet saying, in capital letters, almost mirroring Trump's writing of tweets saying big and only you could do this. And even President Trump stayed in the palace last night. So I think everyone is trying their best to roll out the red carpet and make him feel at home and comfortable and just carefully manage this important summit.
And meanwhile, Ukraine's also set to be a big topic. Volodymyr Zelensky is there. He's said to meet Trump on the sidelines. This is, of course, after their disastrous meeting in the Oval Office, but then a more calm one at the Vatican. How do you expect this meeting will go?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I mean, visuals aside, President Zelensky wore kind of a suit jacket yesterday to the dinner, and this was something that some people in the White House criticized him for. So I thought that he's even trying to make effort to kind of comply with the president and his team's views of how someone should dress. I think that Zelensky has learned how to manage Trump in a much better fashion, and I think that it should go extremely smoothly. I think there's a lot at stake here, and I think that he has learned his lesson from the past experience in the White House, which was pretty traumatic, I think, for all involved.
Indeed.
So I think that...
Sorry, Theresa Fallon, we're going to have to leave it there. We're running out of time, but thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.